Gaslighting is one of the most damaging forms of psychological manipulation. Not because it's loud or aggressive, but because it's subtle, persistent, and personal. At its core, gaslighting is the deliberate attempt to make someone doubt their own perception of reality, not just their opinions, but their memory, judgment, emotions, and sanity. The term gaslighting comes from the 1944 film Gaslight. In the movie, a husband slowly manipulates his wife by dimming the gas lights in their home and insisting nothing has changed. When she notices the lights flickering and questions it, he denies it. Over time, she begins to doubt her own senses. That is the blueprint. Gaslighting doesn't start with, "You're crazy." It starts with, "That never happened." You're remembering it wrong. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. Then eventually, you can't trust yourself. The goal is not to win an argument. The goal is control. But here's what makes gaslighting especially destructive. It attacks the most basic psychological foundation a human being has, the ability to trust their own perception of reality. Your mind is your internal compass. It tells you what you saw, what you felt, what occurred. Gaslighting bends that compass, and once the compass bends, everything feels unstable. Gaslighting works through repetition. A single denial is irritating. Repeated denial becomes destabilizing. When someone consistently contradicts your lived experience, especially someone you trust, love, or depend on, your brain begins to compensate. Instead of assuming the other person is lying, it assumes you are mistaken. This is not weakness, this is cognitive survival. Your brain prefers internal correction over relational rupture. It would rather think, "Maybe I'm wrong," than accept someone I trust is intentionally distorting reality. That survival instinct is what manipulators exploit. Over time, the target begins to second-guess neutral events. Conversations are replayed, tone is re-examined, memory is cross-checked. You might start documenting interactions, saving messages, asking friends, "Did that sound normal to you?" Not because you are irrational, because your internal compass has been tampered with. The psychological effects compound: chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, emotional numbness, loss of confidence, dependence on external validation. And here is the quiet shift that often goes unnoticed. You stop arguing with the manipulator, you start arguing with yourself. That is the moment control becomes internalized. Gaslighting shows up anywhere power exists. In romantic relationships, a partner says, "I never said that," even when you remember the exact conversation. In families, a parent says, "That didn't affect you," dismissing real emotional harm. In workplaces, a supervisor says, "You misunderstood the instructions," when the instructions were unclear. In institutional or religious environments, concerns are reframed as rebellion. Confusion is reframed as spiritual weakness. The message becomes consistent. Your reality is negotiable. Mine is not. Notice the pattern. Gaslighting is not just denial, it is strategic reframing combined with emotional minimization. It often follows this structure. First, deny the event. Second, question your interpretation. Third, attack your emotional response. Fourth, suggest a character flaw. Now it is no longer about what happened, it is about what is wrong with you. That is how it breaks people. Because humans can survive conflict, they can survive disagreement, they can even survive betrayal. But prolonged reality distortion fractures identity. When you cannot trust your own perception, you lose psychological footing. And when you lose footing, you become easier to control. This is why gaslighting is so destabilizing. It creates dependency. If you cannot trust yourself, you will eventually rely on the manipulator to define what is real. That dependency is the objective. Now here's the critical pivot. Recognizing gaslighting is the first step out. Naming it restores cognitive alignment. When you identify the tactic, you re-establish the boundary between your perception and their distortion. You don't need perfect memory to trust yourself. You don't need their agreement to validate your experience. You don't need to prove your reality in order for it to be real. Reality does not require permission. But awareness alone is not enough. You must also reclaim internal authority. That means slowing down instead of defending immediately, observing patterns instead of isolated incidents, seeking grounded external perspectives, not validation addiction, rebuilding confidence through small, self-trusting decisions, and most importantly, separating disagreement from distortion. Healthy disagreement says, "I see it differently." Gaslighting says, "It didn't happen the way you think," and that says something is wrong with you. There is a difference. If this clarified something you've been struggling to name, do not ignore that recognition. The moment you can articulate the tactic, the manipulation weakens. Awareness disrupts control. Clarity restores stability. And the ability to trust your own perception is not arrogance, it is psychological sovereignty.